Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Today, NPR shaming. I was listening to NPR recently, This American Life. I've not become addicted to this, but it's a podcast with some degree of frequency, which really is very refreshing. It's difficult, and I lament even with Short Funk, that there are periods of time where podcasts just aren't being produced. But NPR does continue to produce podcasts with a frequency where, if you're going through a general rotation, you'll hear them accordingly. This particular podcast was associated with the plight of school districts that don't get enough funding and the phenomena of school busing. And I've experienced school busing firsthand because in 1990 I attended Ralph Waldo Emerson Junior High and experienced there African American students predominantly, some Latinos as well, but a lot of Latinos lived locally, being bused into Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it meant that most of my peers at the time, particularly the African American peers that befriended me, lived between 30 to 50 miles away from Ralph Waldo Emerson. It was all very curious. The narrative that NPR gave was associated with a school district, a predominantly black school district, that was forced to, just identify that, the normal school district boundaries could no longer apply because they'd completely lost any, degree of accreditation through standardized testing. And thus, these African American students had to go to the predominantly white school district nearby, and the predominantly white school district fought these African American students arriving, and there was a whole lot of kind of racist overtones and general digressions accordingly. I reflected on this particular incident associated with my relationship with the local community. I put money into the local community centre. I do a variety of things. I'm active in the community in terms of my vice presidency and just generally trying to rally to get even basic services. I mean, what the bare minimum of this community deserves in the context of just no meaningful representation from our council member, no representation from the mayor, and no notion that, they have anti-gentrification platforms, so they're explicitly against the notion of putting in resources to basically improve the neighbourhood, because that's gentrification and that goes against their standard platform. And I reflected in the context of this NPR recording associated with the fact that if I then leave this community, are there moral objections? What am I doing on a moral level when I escape from this community to escape from the gunfire and other things? And is my participation in the community sufficiently important to negate, not necessarily negate some aspects of my safety, but just make me think a little bit more about whether I need to persist in this community and try to work through whatever is going on? And this kind of narrative made me rather uneasy, because as it is currently, I'm actively working in the community, I'm actively the vice president, but I do think what would it do to me in terms of my stress levels, in terms of a wide variety of factors, if I disengage from this thing in some degree. Within the next 2 years, there will be local elections, and I'm really very concerned to participate in the local community body when people actively support the local council member, for example, who I think is next to useless. My view is, in fact, if he did less than what he does currently, he'd probably be better, because the stuff that he does just doesn't really support the community. He's there in the big PR events, but in terms of the actual meaningful interaction, in terms of actively representing the community and doing things to support the community, he's pretty well non-existent. Thankfully, he didn't support a local building project, but aside from that, the circumstances in this community are worse than when he entered office, and I think that's really a damning factor. So NPR, to a certain extent, offered me food for thought, some degree of shaming. My perspective is we'll probably be here for at least another 2 years, but I'm in this period leading up to November about what role I should play in the community for the next 2 years, whether I should continue to participate as a local community member on the community board, or whether I should just take my energy and reinvest it in myself. And in this regard, I'm interested actually in feedback from listeners, because you have had a very intimate experience associated with my toings and froings on this matter. And I'm interested in hearing from listeners associated with their thoughts, would they just be running out of the community at speed, or do they appreciate the benefit of actually having, someone such as myself participating in this thing? Most of the time, I feel my efforts are not to anything, to no avail. That the circumstances continue to perpetuate, and the majority of the board is just about rubber stamping the status quo and not about making meaningful improvements. And in this light, I don't know what more I can say, but I'm looking and I'm interested in listener feedback on this. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.